Have you ever had the feeling that life is supposed to hurt less than this? Not that life should be perfect, not that you should never experience loss, disappointment, anxiety, or grief, but that somehow, somewhere, things have become heavier than they need to be. Maybe you replay conversations long after they've ended. Maybe you worry constantly about what might happen tomorrow. Maybe a painful event from years ago still seems to have power over your mornings. And perhaps the most exhausting part is not the pain itself. It's the confusion, the feeling that you shouldn't still be suffering, that everyone else has figured something out that you haven't. More than 2,000 years ago, in different parts of the world, two philosophical traditions began asking the same question. Why do human beings suffer so much? One emerged in ancient Greece and Rome, the other in ancient India, separated by thousands of miles, separated by centuries, separated by language, culture, and history, yet both arrived at a remarkably similar conclusion. Most suffering is not created by events themselves. It is created by our relationship to those events. And that insight may be just as relevant today as it was then. The Stoics and the Buddhists agreed on something that many modern people find difficult to accept. Pain is unavoidable, but suffering often grows from the stories we tell ourselves about that pain. Today, we'll explore how Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus approached suffering through Stoicism, how the Buddha and Thich Nhat Hanh approached it through Buddhism, where these traditions agree, where they differ, and what their shared wisdom might mean for someone struggling with anxiety, emotional pain, or the feeling that life has become unbearably heavy. Because if both traditions are right, the problem may not be that life is hurting you. The problem may be that you're fighting realities that neither philosophy believes can be avoided. Let's begin with the Stoics. Stoicism is often misunderstood as a philosophy of suppressing emotion, but that was never the goal. The Stoics were interested in freedom, not freedom from difficult events, freedom from being controlled by them. Epictetus was born into slavery. He knew suffering firsthand. Yet one of his most famous teachings appears in the Enchiridion. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Think about that for a moment. Two people can experience the same event. One sees catastrophe, the other sees challenge. The event is identical, the experience is not. For the Stoics, suffering often begins when we demand that reality be different from what it is. We want people to behave differently. We want the future to be certain. We want loss not to happen. We want aging to stop. We want difficult emotions to disappear immediately. And when reality refuses to obey our preferences, we suffer. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea repeatedly in Meditations. As emperor, he faced war, plague, betrayal, and personal loss. Yet he reminded himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. This wasn't denial. Marcus wasn't saying painful events aren't painful. He was saying that between the event and your suffering sits an interpretation, and interpretations can change. For someone experiencing anxiety today, this insight is deeply relevant. The anxious mind often treats imagined futures as present realities. A possibility becomes a certainty. A setback becomes a disaster. A rejection becomes proof of worthlessness. The Stoic response is simple but demanding. Pause. Separate what happened from what you're telling yourself about what happened. Then ask, is this judgment true, or is it merely familiar? The Stoics believed much of our suffering survives because our interpretations go unquestioned. Now let's turn to Buddhism. If Stoicism begins with judgment, Buddhism begins with attachment. The Buddha's first teaching after his enlightenment addressed a reality that many people spend their lives trying to avoid. Life contains suffering. In Buddhist thought, this is known as dukkha. The word is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is broader. It includes dissatisfaction, restlessness, the sense that something is always missing, the feeling that even good moments never seem to last long enough. The Buddha observed that human beings suffer because they cling to things that are inherently temporary. We cling to possessions, relationships, identities, success, youth, health. And when these inevitably change, we feel wounded, not only because we lost something, but because we expected it to stay. This is where Buddhism and Stoicism begin sounding surprisingly similar. Both traditions argue that reality itself is rarely the primary source of suffering. Our resistance to reality is. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent. Everything changes. Everything. And suffering increases whenever we demand permanence from an impermanent world. Centuries later, Thich Nhat Hanh brought this teaching into modern life with extraordinary clarity. He often spoke about embracing suffering rather than fleeing from it. Not because suffering is good, but because understanding suffering is the beginning of freedom. As he wrote, "No mud, no lotus." The meaning is simple. Growth does not happen despite suffering. It often happens through it. For Thich Nhat Hanh, emotional pain becomes unbearable when we refuse to face it, when we distract ourselves from it, judge it, fight it, or pretend it shouldn't exist. Instead, he encouraged people to meet suffering gently, like a caring parent holding a crying child, not trying to eliminate the pain immediately, simply allowing it to be seen. This is where Buddhism diverges slightly from Stoicism. The Stoics often emphasize examining judgments. Buddhism emphasizes observing experience itself, without grasping, without resisting, without becoming lost inside it. And now we arrive at the most interesting question. What happens when we place these traditions side by side? Despite their differences, both point toward the same uncomfortable truth. Human beings suffer twice. First, from reality, then from their resistance to reality. The first suffering is often unavoidable. The second is where philosophy enters. You lose a relationship. The loss hurts. That is human. But then comes the second layer. This shouldn't have happened. I can't live without this person. My life is ruined. The event becomes a story, and the story becomes a prison. You feel anxiety about the future. The uncertainty is real. But then comes the second layer. What if everything falls apart? What if I fail? What if I never recover? Again, the mind transforms uncertainty into suffering. The Stoics would tell you to examine those judgments. The Buddhists would tell you to observe those thoughts without attaching to them. Different methods, same destination, freedom from unnecessary suffering. Perhaps this is why these traditions continue speaking to modern people. Our technology has changed. Our psychology has not. We still struggle against uncertainty. We still fear loss. We still demand permanence from a changing world. And we still believe that peace will arrive once reality finally behaves the way we want it to. But both Stoicism and Buddhism challenge that assumption. Peace does not come from controlling life. Peace comes from changing our relationship to life. That is their shared insight, and perhaps their greatest gift. So what does this mean for someone carrying anxiety, grief, disappointment, or emotional pain today? Neither tradition promises a life without suffering. Neither offers a shortcut. Neither says you can think your way out of every difficult emotion. Instead, they offer something quieter, a possibility. The possibility that some of the weight you're carrying does not belong to the event itself, It belongs to the struggle against the event, to the stories, the resistance, the demands placed upon reality. And if that is true, then perhaps relief does not begin when life changes. Perhaps it begins when your relationship to life changes. More than 2,000 years apart, the Stoics and Buddhists arrived at the same doorway. Acceptance, not passive resignation, not defeat, but a willingness to see reality clearly before demanding that it becomes something else. And maybe that leaves us with a question worth sitting with. If some of your suffering comes not from what happened, but from your resistance to what happened, what would change if you stopped fighting reality for just one day? Which perspective resonates with you more, Stoicism or Buddhism? Let me know in the comments below.